Special United Nations Ambassador Jared Ssengimba. Here is the 14th and the last part of United Nations peacekeeping operations and introduction. The last lesson is lesson 6, the police component. The United Nations police component has been serving in peace operations since the 1960s. Traditionally, the service was limited to monitoring, observing, and reporting. From the early 1990s, advisory, monitoring, and training functions were integrated into the monitoring activities. The opportunities to act as a collective mechanism with domestic police and other law enforcement agencies. There are a variety of tasks and levels of involvement of police in the field. The growing complexity of their tasks in peacekeeping is that United Nations police play a critical role in establishing public safety and preventing crimes in addition to facilitating the rule of law in close collaboration with the host country police force and the civilian component such as human rights, judicial, civil affairs, and corrections. Generally, United Nations police are deployed to multidimensional peacekeeping operations because they play a critical role in establishing public safety and preventing crimes and facilitating the rule of law. In doing so, they work with the host country police in close collaboration with the civilian components such as human rights, judicial, civil affairs, and corrections. So UN police are police officers and other law enforcement personnel on active duty in their home countries who are temporarily seconded to a peacekeeping operation. The secondment is usually for about 6 months to 1 year. Many categories of police personnel in peacekeeping operations. There are 2 categories of UN police. There are individually deployed UN police officers and formed police units, FPUs. Both categories of UN police reports to the head of the police component. UN police component includes, as I have said, UN individual police officers, IPOs, formed police units, FPUs, and they report to the head of the police component. United Nations individual police officer is a member state police officer who serves in a peacekeeping operation or special police mission in different functions, including community policing, capacity building, and training. Formed police units is a standalone unit of police officers that is deployed from the same country. The FPUs, formed police units, generally consist of about 140 officers. Their roles are to provide public order and support to the peacekeeping operation. Mandated functions of United Nations police. Although police components differ from mission to mission, they may be involved in the following mandate functions: reform, restructuring, rebuilding, operation support, and interim policing and law enforcement. Reform, restructuring, and rebuilding include assessment like national capacity mapping, reform of security sector, institutional assessment, census, identification. They also include capacity building and integrity, vetting, selection, recruitment, training, certification and decertification, advising, institutional development. While Um, while officers uh, include, while the function of operation support include investigation, election security, security for refugee and IDP camps, patrols to enhance visible policing, protection of UN personnel and facilities. So, on the interim policing and law enforcement, we have activities like national police services are initially absent. Full responsibility for policing, powers of arrest and detention, monitoring law and order, establishing local police services, gradual transfer of responsibility. Missions like UNMIK in Kosovo, UNTAED in Timor-Leste. So, working together, civilian, police, and military components. Joint functioning of different components in a peacekeeping operation. All peacekeeping personnel must have a basic understanding of the impact contribution of each component. Function within a mission. Everyone in a mission has important contribution to make in achieving the fundamental mandated mission plan. Understanding the importance of each other is contributing, and each other's contribution is particularly vital in multidimensional peacekeeping operations. These missions have complex mandates and operations in difficult environments. The work of each component affects influences tasks of other components. No. In order for an UN peacekeeping operation to achieve its mandate, it must strategically use the capabilities of all the components at the right moment. The strategy on how to do this is outlined in the mandate. Implementation planning integrated strategic framework. The guidelines to follow for working together in a peacekeeping operation. Joint functioning of different components requires everyone in the peacekeeping to have a basic understanding of the main tasks and functions of different components in a mission. Peacekeeping personnel to know how and when to help each other in achieving the mandate. All parts of UN peacekeeping operations function under the same mandate. Report to the same head of mission, share a single budget, and depend on the same integrated support services. There are significant cultural differences. These include national, institutional, and professional differences. These are both within and between the components. Peacekeeping personnel must work to bridge those differences, those differing institutional cultures. At the same time, it is important not to stifle the cultural and institutional diversity, which is one of the United Nations' main strengths. Peacekeeping operation, joint or integrated structures, in order to ensure better integration and utilization of resources and assets. UN peacekeeping operations use joint or integrated structures. All missions have integrated support services, ISS, a joint mission analysis country, GMAC, and a joint operations center, GOC. All of these joint centers are headed by a civilian and bring together civilian, military, police specialists to ensure that information, action, and resources are effectively used across all components of the mission. We have Integrated Support Services, ISS, Joint Mission Analysis Center. We have Joint Operations Center. Integrated support services are responsible for providing logistics support to all mission components, including in regions or sectors. Integrated support services control all logistical resources in the mission, including UN-owned, commercially contracted, and military logistics or enabling units such as construction and maintenance engineering, medical, movement control, supply, and transport assets. The Chief of the Integrated Support Services exercises tasking authority over all uniformed personnel resources assigned to ISS. Combat units such as combat aviation units or combat field engineers are not under the Chief of ICS. These are tasked by the head of the military component. In UN peacekeeping operation with the military logistics unit, known in Operation Center, GOC is established as part of the integrated support services, the role of coordination for all aspects of logistics support in the mission area. Then let's see the Joint Mission Analysis Center. GMAC are also joint structures which deal with the substantive sides of the mission. The GMAC assists the head of mission to gather and understand information available from all sources in a mission in a country, produce medium and long-term analysis on the actual and potential threats to mandate implementation. Then Joint Operations Center, GOAC, assists the head of mission to remain aware of the operational situation in the mission area, produce regular and timely integrated operations reports on all aspects of the mission's operations. During a crisis event, Joint Operations Center becomes the head of mission's crisis management center. So let's see one UN integrated approach between UN peacekeeping operations and the UN country team. The UN engagement in countries emerging from conflict rarely begins with the deployment of a peacekeeping mission. In most cases, many of the UN partner agencies operate in the ground, on the ground long before the deployment of a UN peacekeeping mission and stay long after the mission leaves agencies of the UN country team. The UN country team is made up of all the UN agencies, funds, and programs who operate in a particular country. Some of the UN agencies, funds, and programs that are most commonly found in the countries where UN peacekeeping operations exist are UNDP, UNICEF, WFP, FAO, the World Bank, and IMF. UNDP leads the UN's efforts to reduce global poverty at the country level. UNDP is the manager of the resident coordinator system. The UNICEF and the UNDP are involved in both conflict prevention and recovery issues immediately after the conflict, as well as development issues, adjusting their programs as the situation evolves. These tend to be present before, during, and after the existence of a UN peacekeeping operation, and are also key partners for the peacekeeping operations exit strategy. UNICEF is the UN leading agency in fighting children poverty and violence, disease, and discrimination. WFP are involved primarily with providing humanitarian assistance. They tend to have larger offices or programs during stabilization phase of a peacekeeping operation. FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, are more involved in long-term development assistance. It provides support to efforts that facilitate sustainable access to a high-quality food for people around the world. World Bank and the IMF, international financial institutions, which are part of the wider United Nations family, may also be full members of the United Nations country team, although sometimes they may operate more independently of the UN country team and the peacekeeping mission. Either way, These financial institutions play an extremely important role in the development and economic recovery of post-conflict countries. Therefore, the UN head of mission and the deputy or special representative or secretary general, resident coordinator or humanitarian coordinator, and other key UN personnel coordinate closely with them in all cases. Impact of UN country team in peacekeeping operations. UN country team is a valuable resource to any peacekeeping operation because it is a source of extensive knowledge about the host country and the conflict situation, particularly for those agencies present prior to the arrival of a peacekeeping operation. Can help identify and build relationships with the key national partners such as national and local authorities, as well as with the local civil society groups. Create mechanisms to ensure that peace-building activities introduced during the stabilization or humanitarian phases are carried over into the development phase when the peacekeeping withdraws. Has the impact of UN country team in a peacekeeping operation also has financial resources and expertise in programming, which peacekeeping operations often do not. Integration between a peacekeeping operation and the UN country team. Integrated approach and strategic partnerships. Integrated approach. In multidimensional UN peacekeeping operations where the mandate has strong linkages with the objectives and programs of the UN country team, the UN has adopted an integrated approach for all parts of the UN system that are actively in the country. This means that the UN peacekeeping operation and the UN country team are all working towards same strategic vision. They engage in joint planning, and depending on the context, they have joint projects in key areas. There may also be regional UN officers outside the capital where mission and UN country team personnel share the same facilities. While this may appear obvious, integration presents a number of challenges. UN partner agencies are governed by mandates, decision-making structures, and funding arrangements that are different from those of a peacekeeping mission. Strategic partnerships. Achieving a coherent and mutually supportive approach does not necessarily mean that the peacekeeping operation and the UN country team must be physically working together or located in the same building. Instead, such partnership under the leadership of the special representative of the Secretary General should be based on a shared vision among all UN actors. As to the strategic objectives of the UN presence at the country level, the vision should be based on a shared understanding of the operating environment. This means that planning should always be on the basis of an integrated approach. Whether or not individual activities or tasks required to achieve the strategic objectives must be carried out in an integrated manner depends on whether or not it will add real value and improve the impact of the UN engagement in the country. This is decided on a case-by-case basis, depending on the mandate and the resources and the capabilities of the particular mission and UN country team on the ground. Consequently, some but not all multidimensional peacekeeping operations may be structurally integrated with the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General of the mission, also carrying out the function of the resident coordinator of the any country team. The Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General may also carry out the function of the humanitarian coordinator within the humanitarian community. This means he or she carries the title of Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General or the humanitarian coordinator, and is also part of the mission leadership team, the senior level decision-making forum of the peacekeeping operation. The humanitarian country team is composed of the United Nations agencies, funds and programs, the international, national, non-government organizations involved in the provision of humanitarian assistance, components of the International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. It is chaired by the humanitarian country team is chaired by the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General or the Resident Coordinator or the Humanitarian Coordinator in integrated missions. The humanitarian country team has the main purpose of agreeing on common strategic issues related to humanitarian work in a country, ensuring that assistance is coordinated, integration between a peacekeeping operation and UN country team examples. Example number 1, disarmament and demobilization of the integration DDR is a task in which the United Nations the United Nations uses, the UN commonly uses an integrated approach in DDR. In the former UN mission in the Sudan, UNMISS, for the first time in integrated DDR unit was created combining the mission, UNDP and UNICEF personnel. Example number 2. The UN mission in Liberia, UNMIL, illustrates some best practices on how integration works in practice. More information can be found in the UN Liberia report, A Common Vision for Uncommon Results, an overview of UN integration in Liberia from March 2009. So regardless of who, whether your peacekeeping operation is formally considered an integrated mission or not, it is important for all peacekeeping personnel to share information with their UN country team partners, ensure that their activities are appropriately coordinated to ensure the maximum impact for the local population. So I, at the end, completed my course, United Nations Peacekeeping Operations and Introduction Training, with an exam or a test in which I scored exactly the threshold of the marks that was needed, 80%. At the very first seat of the examination, and I obviously obtained a certificate, and this course online on the United Nations, one of the United Nations learning portals online. So that's all I had to share with you as review. And this 14th series, this 14th part puts an end to this review of mine. Thank you very much for watching, and keep subscribing, keep sharing, and let's keep connected on other platforms.